After 3 years of legal fireworks, Justice Obiora Igwatu of the Federal High Court, Abuja, has ruled that the Nigeria Customs Service, NCS, should stop the collection of excise duty on non-alcoholic carbonated sweetened beverage from members of the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA. According to the court, in a judgment delivered on January 30, the ruling barring NCS from collecting the excise duty would be enforced pending when the provisions of Section 13 of the Customs Excise Tariff and Consolidation Act, CAP C49 LFN, are complied with. The Finance Act of 2021 imposed the collection of 10 naira per litre of non-alcoholic, carbonated and sweetened beverage meant to take effect from 2022, but was vehemently opposed by members of the organized private sector of Nigeria, especially NECA, and Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MEN. The court further declared the implementation of the 2022 fiscal policy measures and tariff amendments of March 1, 2022 that was issued by the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning as null and void. Besides, he said NCS was not entitled to demand transport and feed-in allowances from the plaintiffs. All right, Justice Igwatu has ruled. Rufai, your take on this story. I recall that we debated this when that sugar tax was initially introduced. So this is an update on that.
So the argument here is, yes, there's an argument of, they have no right to be able to do it, which the justice has made in declarative judgment. And I just wanted to read specific portions of that judgment where the judge did say, a declaration is made that the first defendants lack the power to administer, access, or enforce collection of excise duties on non-alcoholic, carbonated and sweetened beverages without enabling the statute specifically empowering the first defendant to do so. The declaration is also made that the elements of the phrase non-alcoholic, carbonated and sweetened as used in Section 17 of the Finance Act in 2021 to be read and applied conjunctively and not disjunctively. And the declaration has also made that the circular entitled Approval for the First Implementation Policies, blah, 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 to amend this, is also introverse. But what's the brass tacks of the matter? There was that tax, which a lot of people call sugar tax. In fact, there were some civil society organizations that took television ads supporting the sugar tax.
I remember diabetes.
Diabetes and all of that. But the argument on both fronts is, one, it's a very bad time for businesses. The beverage sector employs a sizable amount in this country. I don't know the particular percentage, but a sizable amount in this country of most of the employment goes to the beverage sector. You taxing them, the margins are already slim. Was going to cause a disastrous effect. So then they went to court, and these fireworks went on for a while. Yes, it's triumphalism on the part of NECA and the beverage sector, but the question is, will it last? Will the NSC say, okay, let's move forward as regards this? That's Nigeria Customs Service. And also, are we going to have the conversation as regards, this lingering need to be able to tax, the sugar drinks, as it were? Because the civil rights advocates of that tax will not relent. But also, when you look at companies that make all these sweetened beverages, at a time where there's been massive devaluation of the economy, most of them are taking huge position in losses. And it's not as easy for them. So despite all the legalese, is the question of, does it make economic sense at a point in time like this? That's why they've been fighting. I know there's a part for health and all of that. Yes, that can also be done with sensitization. In fact, the CSOs that were advertising, they were saying that most of these monies that are collected in taxes will be used to be able to do awareness as regards diabetes and all of that. And go back to the health sector. But at this point in time, businesses need to make margins. Those margins are already slim. Devaluation has already cut your cost out greatly. And you have importation costs and a couple of other costs. In fact, MAN, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, which all these sweetened beverage companies are part of, recently released a report that based on Forex situations, they lost about close to 1.5 trillion.
Huge.
They made huge losses. So who is going to account for those losses? Because of the terrain of the economy. So apart from all the legalese, which Dr. Abati will go into and expatiate, it is the business sense now that we're fighting. And I think, based on that Finance Act of 2021, I do not think it was a good thing thought out, because these companies don't make as much as we talk about.
Dr. Abati?
Okay. We will all recall that in 2021, there was a Finance Act of 2021. That Finance Act of 2021, among other things, was a fiscal policy regulatory process to generate more revenue for the government. And then, of course, it was controversial, particularly the part that said excise duty will now be taken from certain categories of products. Now, excise, what is excise? Excise is the taxes, to use the straight word, that you place on locally produced goods. And it exists in almost every country of the world, where they use it to regulate consumption, also to generate revenue. So saying excise duty will be this way in Nigeria, I don't think was, in theory, in itself, a problem. However, the Buhari administration did not implement that section of the Finance Act of 2021. It left it, just the same way it left the subsidy regulation. Now, in 2022, the members of NECA, the Employers Consultative Association that had opposed it, decided to go to court. Now, two of the companies most affected by this, the Nigerian Bottling Company and the 7-Up Bottling Company, decided to lead the process. So they are the two leading plaintiffs, with NECA as the third plaintiff, with the defendants being the Nigerian Customs Service and the Ministry of Budget and Planning. And now Justice Obiora Igwatu of the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has now ruled three major things. That section of the Finance Act 2021 is null and void. That the Ministry of Budget and Planning has no right to come to that. That unless the Section 13 of the Customs, Excise and Tariffs Act, is complied with, then that law cannot stand. And that also customs cannot collect, what is it again? Tariffs or, returns, 10 naira per
sugar tax.
Sugar tax, from some members of the association. His Lordship also went for that to, award 200,000 naira cost, in favor of the plaintiffs. Now, where do we stand with this? Now, I have not read the certified true copy of the judgment, and it's always risky to comment on a ruling that you have not read the CTC of the ruling. But this is basically the summary of the background. But the thing is that, what is the interest of the manufacturers? Manufacturers generally do not like to pay anything that looks like tax. It's not that it started now. We have been at it since the days of the interim national government of Chief Ernest Shonekan. This has been the issue since then. Number two is that the Tinubu administration itself has not yet put this into effect. They've not started collecting what you call sugar tax, but the concerned stakeholders have taken the proactive step of going ahead and going to court and securing this judgment. I think the ruling, I don't know, maybe it's an injunction. If it is an injunction, what next? I suspect that what is next is for the defendants, that's the Customs Service and the Ministry of Budget Planning, Budget Planning, to study the CTC and first seek the advice of the Attorney General of the Federation. So we have not had the end of the story yet. The Federal High Court is just a court of first instance. If the federal government decides to go on appeal, since the matter is so important in terms of revenue, in terms of, as I pointed out, controlling consumption, there are countries that introduce excise tax on non-carbonated drinks to control obesity. So if that is the way the mind of government is working, they can go back to court and say, look, this particular section of the Finance Act of 2021 is in public interest, so that people will not be consuming sugar anyhow and create a public health crisis for society. But these are some of the issues. It's a developing story, in my view, because we don't know. We wait for the reaction of the defendants to this Court of First Instance ruling.
Absolutely. Talking about countries who've introduced the sugar tax, it's actually it's World Bank recommended, and about 106 countries currently have the sugar tax in place. Last year, Kazakhstan introduced the sugar tax as they noticed that a significant population of their young people were obese. And so in order to control obesity and also to address certain health concerns, and of course raise revenue for the government, they increased the tax on sugary drinks by 50%, at least 50%. In Nigeria in 2021, the Finance Act has already been established, made a provision for 10 naira per litre on every drink that is sweetened. So many of us are familiar with those carbonated drinks, which means that the price will increase as an effort to deter people from buying. When it was done in Kazakhstan last year, what the hope was that people would then substitute drinking these carbonated soft drinks with water, or perhaps even flavor-infused water, just to encourage a healthier society. In Nigeria, of course, one of the major things, if we're being honest, was to raise revenue for the government. And also, we had some groups come out to talk about how it would largely affect people who had diabetes. It's a contributory factor to stroke, even though there was a lot of debate around whether or not it was directly impactful. We see how this plays out in other areas, like when it comes to cigarettes, alcoholic drinks, where you want to deter or discourage your citizens from taking them because of the health impact of it, and then you introduce high taxes, so it's expensive and not a lot of people can afford it. But the argument still sustains, and I'm talking about the merit of this because, like has been said, it's an ongoing conversation. It's going to be revisited. When they chase it up in higher courts, are they going to sustain that tax? It gives us an opportunity to have even more robust conversation around that. We've talked about the economic impact of this, the timing of the introduction of this tax, and the fact that perhaps just introducing a sugar tax might not be sufficient to discourage people from taking a particular drink, especially if education and awareness is not addressed. If people do not understand why they shouldn't be doing something, and it's just about raising money and increasing taxes, it would have a dire consequence for the companies, for the organizations in question, who are already facing a tough time under the current economic climate, especially for manufacturers like the Nigerian Bottling Company that has been mentioned, and also 7-Up Bottling Company, and also their staff. In fact, a man had said that 15,000 job losses was projected if this excise duty came into place. So these are some of the conversations that will continue to happen, in addition to whether or not due process was followed, as was cited in this ruling. But the conversation continues. We can look at other countries who've been able to successfully implement, raise revenue. But again, very importantly, is the timing, the economic environment, when at a point we're trying to encourage the manufacturing sector and not punish them, as it were, or make business or revenue a bit harder for them at this time in the country's population. Well, like has been said, it hasn't been implemented.
Just a footnote. Alcohol, spirits, and tobacco are not exempted from excise duties. They've been there.
No, they're not. That's why I said example. They put excise duty on them to discourage consumption. So it's been there. So those are examples of the kind of food products that excise duty is imposed on, just to, number one, raise revenue and to discourage its consumption. Those are the examples I cited.